Aetherdrift is the next upcoming set from Magic the Gathering, coming out on February 14th. The set is focused on a multiplanar race set on Avishkar, Amonkhet, and Muruganda, the three main planes of the set itself. But it features a host of characters from all over the multiverse, most from planes we've never actually been to before. I'm actually really excited about this aspect of touching on a plane before we actually go there proper. With that being said, let's look at the 10 main racing teams for the Girapur Grand Prix. We've been told that each team is focused on a two-color pair, so let's look at them all and see what we can guess those pairs might actually be. First are the Aether Rangers, the Avishkar team. Avishkar is the host plane of the entire event, and was previously known as Kaladesh, Chandra's homeworld, so kind of a big deal in the Magic multiverse story as a whole. What we know about the Aether Rangers is that they are going to be featuring Vedalken, human, elves, dwarves, and this really strongly makes them seem red-blue. Vedalken have never been on a card that wasn't at least partially blue. Elves tend to be on green cards, dwarves tend to be on red cards, but they both have some wiggle room, dwarves being on white cards often, and elves being on any number of color. So while each of these types does lend itself to a different color, Vedalken is the only one that really firmly says to me, they must be blue. Reason that I think red seems to win out over, say, green or white is that we know that the captain of the team is Pia Nalaar. Pia Nalaar being Chandra's mother, who has always been on a red card, although most recently was printed on red-white. Next is the Champions of Amonkhet from Amonkhet. Amonkhet is another one of the host planes for the race, where we will be racing through that plane itself. The third host plane is Muruganda, who does not have a racing team. Amonkhet is known to have a strong theme of the human and the undead interacting. Additionally, we know that Basri Ket and a new character, Zahur, are going to be racers on the team, Zahur being an undead Leonid, and Basri Ket always previously being on mono white cards. So very firmly we're seeing black and white for this team. Next is the Cloudspire Racing team. All we know about them so far is that they're originally from Kylam, that there are at least some humans on the team, and that Chandra, Nalaar, and someone named Koladin are the captains of the team. Kylam is known as a plane that's all about sports, and it's in that very good sportsmanship way, not in anything to win kind of way. So red-white is definitely what I think most when it comes to Cloudspire Racing team. Next is the Guidelight Voyagers. They are from an unknown plane, but it's very likely going to be the setting of the Edge of Eternities, the space set coming out at the end of the year. This team appears to consist of robots or constructs, not entirely sure what definition they'll go with, and are controlled by the Medicant Core. The entire team of the Guidelight Voyagers appears to be sort of one huge hive mind. I'm not sure if hive mind's even the right term. It might just literally be only Medicant Core, and that all of the other robots are just extensions of its body. Either way, they have a very robot and energy aesthetic that lines up with blue-white. Next are the Speed Demons, which instead of being from a new plane that we get to touch on before going there proper, they're from Duskmourn, so we just saw them proper, and now we get to see how they tie back into the rest of the multiverse. The Speed Demons are actually led by Winter, or a possessed version of Winter that is being watched over by the Speed Demon, some kind of demon or maybe spirit from Duskmourn. Despite Winter being a black, green, and sometimes red character, and Valgavoth being a black and red character, the aesthetic that we've seen through promotional material is very black-blue. And that doesn't seem completely off. I think that seems really reasonable, and just it would be a really weird curveball if they showed us this very black-blue art and then not make them black-blue. So that definitely gets my vote for the Speed Demons. Next is the Goblin Rocketeers. They are from another unknown plane. They seem to have punched through an instanced Omen Path to Avishkar. Something we're seeing a lot with these new planes is that they're actually planes that care about racing, which I think is a really interesting idea, because if they just took any plane and said, these people have decided that they like racing now, it would feel really ham-fisted, but instead we're seeing a completely new plane where they're being developed from the ground up with racing in mind. I do wonder how that's going to affect the future of those planes and if they're going to feel painted into a corner with that being all the plane is about, but it is still very cool for this set itself. Either way, the Goblin Rocketeers are a band of goblins from an unknown plane that love rockets and racing and are driven by their god, Boost God, in all caps, always in all caps, and try to defy their god's mortal enemy, the Dead Stop deity whose name cannot be uttered. Presumably, they boosted so hard that they were able to break through the planar barriers and ended up in Avishkar. Or an instant Omen Path opened at the exact right time and they just sort of happened to tumble through. Depends who you ask. Either way, they've teamed up with Duretti, who is on Avishkar for an unknown reason, and have entered their team into the race. They seem so incredibly red, very possibly a red-blue situation if we hadn't already touched on that. But honestly, their aesthetic is so rugged that I actually think red-green is more likely. Very gruel, hit hard, go fast kind of situation. Next is the Alacrian Quick Beasts. These are from a new plane, but we know the name of it this time, Alacria. Alacria is described as being connected to Avishkar via a perennial omen path, this sort of stable omen path that they can go back and forth through. The Alacrian Quick Beasts have been described as racer-rider pairs, where they are not actually machines, they are these massive beasts known as Quick Beasts and their riders, who have some kind of bond, and the Quick Beasts themselves are intelligent enough to be considered entrants into the race itself. From the art, we see them as being human and maybe beasts, or maybe a new type called Quick Beast itself. And we have two named racers from the material, Caradora and Logarin. Their aesthetic seems very firmly green-white, both from the art that we've seen with literally a green-white checker pattern, but also the oneness with nature aspect of a rider and steed pairing. Next is the Speed Brood, another team from a completely new plane, described as having an untranslatable name. We know that they are insect people, and specifically we have been introduced to a character named Aetherdrift, who is entering this race as a form of proving themselves as sort of a rite of passage, but instead of rite of passage to adulthood, it's a rite of passage to death. The people of this plane are described as pursuing this form of final metamorphosis into cars. They're going to become the vehicles themselves, and then continue to race in what effectively is the afterlife. But I think they're still alive. It's a little unclear. Either way, they seem really cool, and they seem very green-black. I think it's possible you could go with the green-blue aesthetic because of the transformative, metamorphic nature, but we've seen so many green-black insects in the past that have the same aesthetic as the Speed Brood, and this kind of life and death being central to their mythos, although in this case the death being metamorphosis, does still feel like it lines up very well with green-black aesthetics. Next are the Keel Haulers, which seem to be a pretty mismatched group, but with a very aquatic aesthetic throughout. So far we've seen humans, but also fish people and sharks. The sharks are specifically a species called chordotons, who come from a completely new unknown plane, and they have crashed into Avishkar through another unstable omen path. I don't know why there are so many unstable omen paths connecting to Avishkar right now. Maybe that's happening everywhere and it's the first place we're seeing it, but it seems like kind of a lot. The chordotons have started to live on Avishkar in the coastal regions and are kind of dominating the ecosystem, seems like. Either way, they have formed a team of fish and sharks and humans, and they have a very firm pirate aesthetic. So my first instinct would be that they'd probably be blue-black or blue-red or even blue-red-black, but we know that they are two-color pairs, not three. The racers we've been introduced to are Howler, a chordoton, and Kari Zev. Kari Zev is a pirate and has a very firm red color identity through both her own card and Ragabon's card. Between that and the aquatic nature of the team as a whole, it seems very red-blue. Now we've seen red-blue already, if we assume that's the correct identification for the Aether Rangers. So that does bring something into question. Another option for the Keel Haulers would be blue-green. Other than the Speed Brood, none of the other racers feel especially blue-green, and sharks in the past have had green thanks to the Simic Combine, combining them with other things. It's kind of a weak connection to me, but it might be what they end up going for. That leaves Kari Zev as not really a member of the team, but a mercenary guide, which is how she's described in the Planeswalker's Guide to Aetherdrift. Lastly, there is the End Riders, which are a team from a plane called Gastal, another new plane, which has this very firm Mad Max aesthetic of burnt-out wasteland with nothing to do but drive hard and fast. Once again, open paths opened, and they, by choice, decided to drive through them with really nothing to lose from the barren wasteland they called home. The group we're following, the End Riders themselves, have found their way to Girapur and entered this race. We know nothing about the actual types that are being used in this team, other than probably humans from the promotional material we've seen so far, and that one of the racers is known as Far Fortune, the entire group of the End Riders being referred to as Far Fortune's gang. From the Mad Max aesthetic and the one promotional piece of art we've seen so far, the End Riders are very firmly black-red, with really no other color combination even coming close to the conversation. I'm pretty happy with my breakdown of where each of these teams fall, but I'm still a little unsure about specifically the Keel Haulers. They feel really blue-black to me, personally, as sort of a pirate sharks aesthetic, set, and that could work if we think that the speed demons aren't actually blue at all, but green-black, because green-black is Winter's color identity. That would then move the speed brood from black-green to blue-green, which would fit with their metamorphosis aesthetic. Either way, these are the 10 teams that we have to look forward to. I'm very excited to not only see cool shark people, but also explore their planes in the future when we eventually get to go to them. Have a good day, everyone. I've been Darcy Bits, and I will see you next time.